On an otherwise quiet afternoon that initially passed without particular notice, a surprising warmth quietly stirred the global social media atmosphere when a spontaneous post appeared from the official account of one of BTS's most introspective and quietly powerful members, Suga, who chose that precise moment to reconnect with his fans, army, through a single serene image and a message that felt both deeply personal and universally comforting. As the photo portrayed him dressed in a sleek, navy Valentino jacket with subtle striped accents and a soft black knit beanie, his head gently resting on one hand, wearing a calm and genuine smile that seemed to reach through the screen, exuding a stillness that somehow spoke louder than most stage performances, and below that image was a message where he softly expressed that he missed ARMY deeply, that not a day passed without him thinking of them, that the nights felt longer and quieter than usual, and that in those silences he often wondered how everyone was doing, whether they were healthy and happy, and in that same breath he added that he loved them very much. Not just as fans, but as part of the reason he wakes up with purpose and the strength to keep moving forward. And although the note was brief, its emotional resonance was undeniable, sparking an avalanche of responses from fans across platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and countless online communities, who all paused in mutual silence before flooding the comments with waves of support, heart emojis, and messages filled with reciprocal longing. And almost instantly, the atmosphere among ARMY transformed from quiet anticipation into a kind of virtual homecoming, where thousands shared how much they also missed Suga and how his short message made them feel remembered, seen, and cared for, even in his absence. And within hours, headlines began to appear across digital lifestyle publications, reflecting on the understated power of a message shared at just the right time, with many outlets noting that Suga's quiet love letter is louder than most headlines. And from there the narrative began to evolve, as cultural commentators pointed out how Suga's ability to communicate empathy in such a grounded and minimal way has always set him apart, how he knows when to speak and how to do so without drama or spectacle, and how this ability to share authentic emotion without fanfare has cultivated a uniquely strong bond with fans. And as that moment continued to spread, his gentle encouragements, telling everyone it's okay to feel tired or unwell, as long as they keep trying and protect their hearts, were seen not just as words from a distant celebrity but as honest reminders from someone who understands the universal struggle to keep going. And it became increasingly clear that this message, far from being a mere social media update, had become a moment of collective healing and intimate reconnection between an artist and a global community that has stood by his side for over a decade, with some fans sharing that they had been going through hard times and that his words felt like a quiet hug across the void. And this reaction did not go unnoticed by major publications who rarely dedicate space to something as simple as a selfie caption. But in this case they leaned in, exploring how BTS members, and Suga in particular, have mastered the delicate art of being emotionally present without being overexposed. And they highlighted how, in an era oversaturated with content and noise, the kind of intentional, heart-centered communication that Suga exemplifies is not only refreshing but incredibly meaningful. And the story continued to unfold as social media began to transform the initial post into a broader moment of shared feeling, spawning ARMY-led projects that collected letters, artwork, and tokens of gratitude to send back to Suga, along with messages emphasizing how they too would wait patiently, believing in his return, and feeling that their bond had only grown stronger through this quiet exchange. And in this way, what began as a soft message from a quiet room somewhere far away evolved into a cultural moment that reignited connections and reminded everyone that love, when sincere, can reach across any distance and any silence. And this beautiful simplicity was only the beginning, as reactions from the wider public began to surface, including from those outside the usual ARMY circles, with casual observers and neutral netizens alike expressing admiration for how genuine and heartfelt the post felt, noting how rare it is for a celebrity to share something so vulnerable without appearing calculated or performative. And this impression further solidified Suga's reputation as an artist who communicates not just through music or performance, but also through stillness, intention, and empathy. And even prominent lifestyle magazines like Elle Korea and The Cut began to weigh in, incorporating the post into broader pieces analyzing how Asian celebrities are redefining fan engagement with more authentic, emotionally resonant exchanges. And in these articles, analysts suggested that Suga's strength lies in his restraint, in his choice to remain quiet for long stretches only to reappear at just the right moment with words that feel less like PR and more like a handwritten note passed between friends. And as ARMY communities across the globe began organizing digital events, art submissions, and donation drives in Suga's name as a way to honor the love he shared, the sentiment behind his post only grew stronger and more expansive, turning what could have been a fleeting moment into a sustained expression of collective care and mutual respect. And through all this, cultural analysts also offered thoughtful perspectives on how BTS as a group continues to maintain relevance even while on hiatus, with members like Suga demonstrating a natural ability to foster emotional proximity despite physical absence. And this quality, they argue, reflects a maturity in how modern pop figures can manage their public presence, choosing quality over quantity, intimacy over spectacle. And as the days passed, the lingering impact of Suga's post remained, not as a trending topic but as a small treasure in the hearts of those who read it, a moment they would return to when feeling low, and a reminder that even a short message, when given with sincerity, can reverberate in the soul far longer than the algorithms will track. And in this way, Suga once again showed that his artistry isn't confined to stages or studios, but extends into the quiet spaces where real connection lives, proving that love expressed in silence is no less loud, and perhaps even more enduring, than any shout across the internet. And with this single gesture, he reminded the world that some stars don't need to shine all the time to be remembered. They only need to be real. And as the soft afterglow of Suga's message continued to settle across timelines and group chats around the world, the conversation surrounding his brief but poignant appearance began to widen, shifting from immediate emotional reactions to more considered reflections on the broader implications of his words and presence during this midpoint in his military service, with fans noting how the timing of the post seemed deliberate yet unforced, as if it were less about a PR moment and more about a human need to reach out and express something that had been building in silence. And in that silence people found resonance, because Suga didn't need grand gestures or polished speeches to make his point. Instead, he let the stillness speak, allowing his quiet love and honest sentiment to ripple across languages, borders, and screens. And as ARMY began responding with digital letters, personal stories, and artworks inspired by the photo and message, many expressed that it reminded them of why they had become fans in the first place, citing Suga's authenticity, his introspective nature, and his ability to make even the most complex emotions feel understood and valid. And from there a number of thoughtful editorials emerged, particularly in Korean and international publications focused on culture and entertainment, which began analyzing how idols like Suga are reshaping the notion of celebrity influence not through constant exposure or manufactured charisma, but by cultivating a presence that values honesty over hype, connection over clicks, and that this approach could signal a broader shift in how audiences relate to public figures, less as unreachable icons and more as companions in the shared journey of emotional endurance. And these sentiments were echoed in fan spaces that began compiling their favorite memories of Suga's past interactions, his lyrics, his interviews, building an organic tribute not only to the moment he created recently, but to the pattern of quiet sincerity he has displayed for years, which now took on renewed significance in his absence from public life. And meanwhile, industry insiders began speculating what such a moment could mean for Suga's eventual return, with some suggesting that his careful navigation of silence and speech might serve as a model for other artists during mandatory service or long breaks, offering a way to stay emotionally present without overexposure. And while the speculation remained respectful, it nonetheless underscored how much influence even a single post from Suga could have, not only on his fandom but on the rhythm and language of the K-pop industry at large. And within this growing dialogue, one particular detail stood out among many: the way Suga framed his message not around himself but around ARMY, centering their well-being, asking how they were, and reminding them to be gentle with themselves, which felt especially poignant in a digital landscape often defined by self-promotion and curated perfection. And as users reflected on this, and so the ripple of that moment refused to fade, expanding beyond the immediate warmth of its initial impact and instead embedding itself deeper into the rhythm of daily life for many who encountered it, not as a viral spark but as a slow-burning reminder of presence. As fan accounts continued to share reflections and reinterpretations of Suga's words in the context of their own experiences, with some turning his message into minimalist posters, others recording instrumental covers of his past songs layered with soft-spoken readings of the quote, and many simply bookmarking the post as something to return to on days when motivation felt scarce. And as these organic tributes continued, the conversation slowly turned toward what it means for an artist to sustain relevance not through activity but through essence, with cultural critics and longtime music journalists noting that Suga has become a kind of quiet architect within the BTS legacy, not always the loudest or most visible, but consistently among the most intentional, and that this consistency is now becoming a blueprint for artists navigating the delicate line between duty and identity, especially in an era when every move is documented and dissected in real time. And still, amid all this, Suga himself remained silent after the post, choosing not to follow it with another update, another image, or any elaboration, which only seemed to heighten the reverence with which fans treated the original message. Because in its singularity it became iconic, a frozen frame of emotion that didn't require a sequel. And meanwhile, on social media, fan translations of the message were being printed on handmade postcards, stickers, and care packages meant to be distributed at local army meetups and charity drives, turning emotional expression into community action. And this pattern of Suga's stillness catalyzing collective movement began to attract the attention of academic spaces as well, with a few university seminars on fandom and digital communication citing the incident as a live case study of parasocial dynamics redefined not as dependency but as mutual emotional engagement. And while that might sound clinical, for those within the moment it was anything but, because what Suga had done, intentionally or not, was offer a mirror for people to pause and consider their own emotional state, to check in with themselves and feel a little less alone in doing so. And even as weeks passed, screenshots of the post continued to circulate with new captions and gentle reminders added by fans. Notes like, "Remember when he said this?" or "This still helps me today," demonstrating that it wasn't just the novelty of hearing from him, but the substance of what he chose to say that stayed with people. And this enduring presence, this emotional residue, became something more than fan service. It became testimony to the depth of Suga's artistic voice, one that extends beyond lyrics and beats into the quieter terrain of emotional leadership, where being available in heart, even when unavailable in body, becomes a radical act of care. And this reality, that one person's honesty could spark thousands of reflections and reminders, began to reshape how other artists and agencies observed audience connection, with a few industry insiders subtly acknowledging in trade interviews that the BTS members, especially Suga, have recalibrated expectations of what engagement should look like during hiatus periods, not by doing more but by meaning more. And in this context, his message wasn't just a note to ARMY, it was a cultural artifact, something preserved not because it was rare but because it was real. And as the K-pop world moved on with new debuts, releases, and trends, there remained this pocket of stillness created by Suga's post, like a lighthouse glowing faintly in the background, not needing to outshine but simply to reassure. And fans continued to carry it with them, not just as a piece of content, but as a feeling, as proof that even in separation, connection can remain. And now, as the calendar edges closer to the anticipated dates of members completing their service, the quiet impact of moments like this one begin to form a bridge, subtly preparing hearts for the reunions to come. And with it comes a deeper understanding that perhaps what defines an artist's greatness isn't only in what they produce or perform, but in what they leave behind when they pause. And Suga, in leaving a single message nestled within a quiet photo, has left behind not noise but a stillness full of meaning. Not presence for performance but presence for comfort. And maybe that's why it matters so much, because in a world racing forward, he offered a moment to stop, to breathe, and to remember that being missed, being loved, and being encouraged, quietly and sincerely, can sometimes be the most unforgettable performance of all. And still, as the days unfolded gently and the post continued to live on not through repetition but through reflection, it became increasingly evident that Suga's gesture had transformed into a shared emotional thread, woven quietly into the daily routines of those who had seen it, not needing constant reminders to be remembered, because it had already embedded itself as part of their emotional landscape. And as fans revisited the photo, his soft smile, the subtle tilt of his head resting against his hand, the cozy texture of his beanie and jacket, they didn't just see an idol checking in, they saw a moment of mutual recognition, an acknowledgement that no matter how far or how quiet things became, there was still care pulsing beneath the surface. And as this awareness deepened, fan essays and opinion pieces emerged across platforms like Medium, Weverse magazine, and even independent zines, where writers explored the phenomenon of Suga's emotional resonance, analyzing how he has consistently chosen to show love not with spectacle but with clarity, not with grandeur but with gravity. And in these pieces fans spoke not only as admirers but as emotional witnesses, detailing how Suga's words had helped them through depressive episodes, academic burnout, loneliness, grief, and even the exhaustion of simply existing in a fast-moving, often indifferent world. And in these heartfelt outpourings the tone was never frantic or sensational but reverent, as if everyone collectively understood that this was not just a celebrity update but a human gesture that had reached them in the right way at the right time. And as more of these reflections surfaced, some being compiled into digital fan books or visual essays, the moment became less about the man in the photo and more about what he made people feel, what he reminded them to believe in again. And amidst this quiet groundswell of appreciation, brands and commercial outlets who often watch these dynamics from the periphery began to acknowledge that the emotional loyalty Suga inspires is not manufactured nor easily replicated because it stems from years of small, honest moments layered on top of one another, an accumulation of sincerity that built not just a fan base but a relationship. And in response to this, even non-fandom circles began echoing the post's sentiment, with some therapists and motivational writers quoting parts of Suga's message in newsletters, saying it exemplified the kind of gentle check-in we all need from time to time, and this ripple effect of a message, migrating from one community to another, translated across languages, reinterpreted through art and shared experience, further solidified the idea that what Suga offered wasn't just comfort for ARMY but a broader cultural pause, a temporary slowing of digital noise that allowed people to feel more deeply, and that feeling, that slowing down to feel, began to be noted as something increasingly rare and valuable, a gift of quiet that echoed in its own way across the timelines. And though Suga remained offline, the digital space he had touched continued to expand thoughtfully, carefully, like a garden that had been watered once but bloomed over time because those who received the gift took it upon themselves to tend to it. And soon even newer fans, those who hadn't been around since the start of BTS's journey, found themselves pulled into this moment, curious to understand why one message could carry such weight, and as they read, scrolled, translated, and watched the reactions unfold, they too began to feel it, that sense of closeness, of being part of something not because they were told to but because it simply felt right. And in that subtle welcoming, the fandom grew not in size but in intimacy, threading yet another layer into the collective understanding of what it means to follow an artist not just for what they do but for who they are when they're not doing. And while many moments in pop culture exist to trend and disappear, to spike and dissolve, this one, quiet, steady, and softly spoken, lingered, because it was never built for noise, it was built for memory, for trust, for the long road. And now, with the steady passing of time and the slow return of the BTS members on the horizon, many fans carry this message like a touchstone, something to keep close as they anticipate what comes next, not out of desperation but with patience, because if there is one thing Suga has taught them through this and through every small gesture before, it is that love given freely, without demand, always finds its way back. And as this knowledge settles in deeper, the moment stands unshaken, a gentle monument to sincerity in an era of spectacle, proving once more that some of the most powerful connections are built not in the roar of the crowd, but in the stillness of one heartfelt message shared at just the right time.